of the time I'd end up just curled up in a ball in the shower tray, sobbing my heart out before composing myself and then coming into the family space to be a dad and husband. But that was just getting harder and harder. And then it got to the point we'd contemplate suicide, put the gun in my mouth, which I did several times.
Okay.
Squeeze the trigger slightly.
What is up, everyone? I am Lachlan Samuel, and this is the Open Up Podcast, the show where real people open up and share real stories of struggle. What is up, everyone? I am Lachlan Samuel, and this is the Open Up Podcast, episode number 4, with my man Jason Nelson, otherwise known as the Kilted Rogue Runner. He's a public speaker for the Western Australia Association of Mental Health, and he does have now his own blog where you get to share your own private stories. Thanks for being here, Jason.
No, my pleasure, mate. It's great to finally catch up.
Yeah, finally. It's been a while in the making.
I know.
What we want to do is jump right into childhood and
Yep.
I guess how you were raised and any influences or events that you feel shaped who you are during that turbulent time of your life, as well as who you are today.
I had a pretty good childhood, to be honest. We didn't have a lot. We were brought up in quite a poor upbringing as far as kind of financial stuff goes with my parents. I suppose one of the main reasons for that financial impact on my folks was, we were a working class family, but in the late 70s we moved to Australia, moved to Adelaide.
Oh, well.
I lived there for a while, and then my mum was really homesick. She ended up moving back to the UK, but being the boomerang palm type of thing cleared them out financially.
Yeah.
Then my dad struggled to get work back there. And materialistic-wise, we didn't have a lot.
Yeah.
It didn't really matter.
Okay.
So other than moving to Australia, didn't really have holidays abroad.
No.
It was mainly camping and that type of stuff. We didn't have a colour TV till 1985.
Wow.
Just things like that, but it didn't matter,
Yeah.
because mum and dad were really just so grounded, and so open. That we weren't spiritual people as such, religious-wise, but I describe their spirit just as a lifestyle more than anything else. Their spiritual being. My dad, as far as I can remember, as a kid, was always drawn to Native American Indians.
Wow.
And he's not a learned man as far as a formal education. He left school at 14, became a joiner's apprentice and a carpenter, but extremely talented as a carpenter, as a sculptor, and as a fine artist. He paints. But yeah, as far as a formal education, he didn't have a great deal, but he's just taught himself so much. And now he actually studies shamanism and
wow, that's awesome.
Reiki and crystal healing and all that. He's a real, I love him to bits. He's probably my single most biggest role model.
Oh, so shamanism, have you ever tried ayahuasca?
No, I haven't.
Are you going to with him?
I'm game to try anything, to be honest with you. It was really good. Last time he was over, a little over a year back, and while he was here, he actually smudged the whole house with burning white sage.
Oh, God.
Smudged it in a feather wand, which he made while he was here. Just to cleanse the house and whatever. He wanted to do it after, which we'll obviously touch on later, but after, because it was only a year or so after Holly, my daughter, had attempted to take her life. He just wanted to clean the energy out of the house.
Yeah.
It was bizarre because the house did feel
a bit
like,
That's awesome.
So, no, I had a great upbringing. Yeah, as I said, didn't have a lot.
Yeah.
But had so much more in other ways.
Okay, so you see materialism or the possession of
things.
Things wasn't a big deal in your family. Would you say you were compensated with love instead?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Some of our holidays, like camping holidays, we used to go to this caravan and campsite called Hendower in North Wales. It was right on the banks of the River Dee, and there was a tributary running through the actual campsite. So there was a trout stream running through the campsite, right in the mountains and the hills. And they were our holidays. We could run feral. It was safe as.
Yeah.
Catch fish in the river, and then up the mountain, on the opposite side of the mountain, we climbed up to the top. There was an old Druid stone circle on the top. They were our adventures, and those holidays meant so much to me that I took my kids holiday in there when they were little to the same spots, and they loved it for the same reason.
Did you feel the same way about it then as you do now?
Oh, yeah.
Did you love those holidays then?
Oh, yeah.
Because it's not quite often that kids who have to go camping and don't get the lavish holidays actually love them like you do. They usually would rather have the lavish holidays and sort of despise having to go camping. So it's quite nice that you've grown up that way with love and enjoying outdoors with your family.
Don't get me wrong. We used to have nice holidays abroad when our kids were growing up, when they were little, but we did it alternate years. Yeah. So one year we'd go to Spain or somewhere in Europe. The following year we'd stay in the UK and do camping and caravanning.
Awesome.
Get to learn a bit about their own country, as well as seeing other cultures. So we still talk about those holidays now. Now they're grown up.
That's cool. So moving on from that, you've grown up with a loving family, been outdoors quite a lot, enjoying those holidays. Were there any influences or events apart from those holidays that you feel shaped you in any way?
I suppose in anyone's life there's the good and the bad side to things. Unfortunately for me, I was sexually assaulted by a person in a position of trust when I was 13 on at least 3 occasions. Without going into too much detail, because that's currently going before the courts. Yeah, I suppose looking back now, going through that process of reporting that and getting some psychotherapy to help me with those things back then, those incidents definitely shaped me. But I'm thankful for them, because they did shape me in that the beauty of hindsight. I look back now and my behaviour as a teenager went downhill, got in with the wrong crowd, into a bit of petty crime and stuff. So, and going through psychotherapy now, I know that was probably one of the causes, probably the cause.
Yeah.
But I was lucky enough that I got to a point when I was like 15, 16, when I knew I wanted to join the military.
Yeah.
And I'm actually thankful I did join the military, because I probably would have continued going with the wrong crowd, and sorry if you can hear the dog in the background. Got in with the wrong crowd, and might have ended up doing all sorts of silly things, to be honest with you. So although it wasn't a great experience to go through, obviously, at the time, being sexually assaulted, but I genuinely believe it made me strong as a person. And from what I've learned about myself, even more so over the last 10 years, I'm a real firm believer that through struggle comes strength, and I've definitely gained that, I think.
That's awesome. Well, I just want to acknowledge that, because obviously that's probably one of the hardest things to talk about, is going through abuse, and obviously touching on it briefly because of what's happening with the courts. I really do just want to acknowledge the fact that you're putting it out there. Hopefully that encourages courage down the line for people currently going through the same thing, thinking internally whether they should share it or not.
Yeah, and it's it's a real individual decision, I suppose, depending on who's affected and the wider connections around you at the time. I'd always encourage people to come forward, not just for the justice side, but at least for your own healing.
Yeah.
But it is an individual decision, and I really appreciate you acknowledging that. I do plan, once it's been through the whole court process, to speak publicly about it, once I'm allowed to at least not inspire people, but at least give people hope or the empowerment or the courage to do the same thing if that's what's going to help.
Yeah. Well, knowing who you are today, obviously speaking for the WA Association of Mental Health and through your Kilted Rogue Runner movement, you are someone who I look up to as someone who's changing the stigma around mental health. So I can only imagine the impact you're going to make when you're finally allowed to talk about this and impact lives with a story that's more hard-hitting and less mainstream. But moving on from that, were there any other influences or events that you feel shaped you?
I suppose one of the things that, if we're going to talk about my running side of stuff, as the Kilted Rogue Runner, my running adventures really started, distance running adventures really started for me when I was 11. And I was doing a 16-mile sponsored walk with my family. It was to raise money for the Royal National Lifeboat Institute in the UK. And when we got to the start of the event, two squads of Royal Marine Commandos turned up in the fatigues. And they were running the whole thing in formation.
Well,
and for some bizarre reason, I don't know why, still to this day probably don't know why, I decided, well, I'm going to give it a go, I'm going to run. 11 years old, probably dressed in the worst gear for running at the time, and a pair of plimsolls or something, nothing like the sports gear that you get today.
Yep.
And I ended up running it, and there was these 2 squads of Royal Marine Commandos, and I came in behind the first squad, but ahead of the second.
Yep.
And I'm 11 years old, and they thought it was awesome, and afterwards they give me a ride in a big truck and that type of stuff. And for me, that was probably the turning point, probably the first time that I decided I want to be in the military.
Yep.
And I come from quite a military family.
Okay.
My dad wasn't in the military, but he was a ship joiner, military shipbuilders.
Yep.
Grandfathers were military, uncles were military. Yeah, but that's where the distance running came from. And also for me, it's where, even without a lot of talent, as far as, I didn't know what I could run before that day.
Yep.
But I always look back to that event as in, well, if you can set your mind to something, yeah, you might feel like shit, or you might be aching for days afterwards, but you can do it, right?
Yeah.
If you set your mind to it, you can do it. So yeah, from that sort of moment on, that's where my love for distance running came.
That's awesome.
Albeit carried on through school, track and field, and I've kind of been distance running ever since. So
that's amazing. Do you feel like it's possible that you tie the reward of distance running to that feeling of being congratulated by the commandos and going for a ride in the truck?
I probably did back then.
Yeah.
Now for me though, distance running is meditation for me.
Okay. Your time alone where you can shut the thoughts off.
It's my self-care. I never run with music. I never listen to anything.
Wow.
Even on the long, like when I'm training for a marathon, and the longest training runs will be 32, 33 Ks.
Okay.
I never run with listening to anything. Because for me, when I run, I listen to my breathing rate, I listen to my feet fall, and then I just get into a zone, and it's meditation for me. So I'll do all my thinking, all my planning, put the world to right, come back. I always feel better anyway, better energised, and obviously get those endorphins flooding around the body.
Awesome.
So that's the reason why I've continued to do it. I love running on different places, travelling around running, but the main reason to keep on top, not just for the physical fitness, but for my mental fitness as well.
Well, that's quite good that you've mentioned the running being your meditation, because at the later end of the interview, I'm going to ask you for a tip, but I think we'll just use running as your actionable tip for anyone who's currently going through a struggle or a down period in their life, and they just need a break from those negative thoughts. So if you could explain how you run.
It's the same process every time. Get out the door, I'll just ease into it. I don't go out at a particular pace. I spend the first 5 minutes just warming up, getting into it, and then getting into the zone. So I concentrate on my breathing. Mm-hmm. Normally, so many steps as I breathe in, so many steps as I breathe out.
Yeah.
Get into that process, listen to my feet hitting the ground, and then just keep doing that process. And then while I do that, then I process what I'm thinking about at the time, whether I've had a tough week or a tough day.
Yeah.
I also find that running in nature is just so much more fulfilling and mindful than running on the road, right?
Yeah.
And I always mix up the places I run because I don't want to get bored. Or even like for people to run barefoot along the beach, something like that, where you can kind of get closer to nature and to the elements. Yeah, that's my tip for people. And I don't want to scare listeners in that people that, I could never run a marathon, or could never run distance. But I've probably trained maybe about 10 people from zero to marathon.
That's amazing.
And it can be done. It's just, you just got to trust the process.
Okay. And as someone who has trained 10 people from zero to marathon, what change do you see in those people mentally?
I say it straight from day one. Distance running is 20% fitness, 80% mental.
Yep.
And it's rewarding for me to see that change those people.
Of course.
I trained my eldest daughter's friend last year to run a half marathon, and same kind of process. There's no way I can run that distance.
Yeah.
When we first started, we were out on the training runs, we were literally running and then walking, running and then walking, running and walking, and building the running up, less in the walking, building the run up. And then it was all about belief, right? I knew this girl had the fitness level there, or at least the baseline, but it was all the mental.
All mental.
Yeah. And then getting to the point where I'd actually kind of lie to her when we were out on training runs. Yeah. So she never had a GPS watch or anything like that, and it would be like, how far we've gone, and we might have gone 2 Ks, so I'd say we've gone 2.5, or Yeah. So, but it kind of worked. I remember one day, it was 12 months ago, last week.
Yep.
We went for a run and I told her, and we were doing a mix of road and trail. And I said to her, we're just doing 12K. So, we've been running for a while by this time. But towards the end of it, I had to cough to her because we actually ran 15. Through trails that was hilly and rocky, and we started off in the sunshine, and then it was pissing down by the end of it. We were piss wet through by the end. But even last week, this memory had come up on Facebook for her, and she'd messaged me and saying, we were still chatting about it.
Awesome. As
a thing that we accomplished together. And it was interesting. She ran the HBF half marathon last year. And then she kept ticking over, not doing a great deal of longer distance, but she kept ticking over. And then she decided 2 weeks out from the City to Surf in August that she was going to run the City to Surf half marathon.
Wow.
And I wasn't able to train or run with her at the time, but she ended up PBing.
That's amazing.
All on her own. So, yeah, it's just about instilling that belief, I think.
Oh, that's amazing. I didn't expect that outcome or that gain from running. Obviously, hearing you explain how you run, it's pretty evident that you use it as more like a form of reconnecting back to consciousness and staying in the moment, which is, I guess, a movement in itself at the moment, especially through meditation. And as you say, you use running as your meditation, but also using running as something to break through that self-limiting belief.
I remember all of those kind of little milestones that we reached.
Yep.
I'm back training with her again because she lives with anxiety too, and it certainly helps her. Okay. So, over only the last couple of weeks, I've started training with her again for HBF this year. But I can already see the difference with her. And she's actually said the last couple of weeks, it's really going to help her with her final year of uni and all that type of stuff. So
it's a lot of stress.
But it's keeping her focused and keeping her energized.
Awesome. So, fast forwarding from this running, which is an amazing actionable tip that anyone out there can use when they're feeling down, when they're feeling
I'm going to share another tip with you later as well.
Okay, awesome. Fast forwarding from running and the commandos congratulating you while you're 11 and then the abuse at 13, we're going to move on to your story, and why we are here today is to share your story with other people listening, to hopefully encourage the sort of courage that you have downline so they may open up and release some of that excess baggage that they're carrying. Mm-hmm. Can you walk us through your story?
Yeah, I kind of explain leaving school age and then up until my suicide attempts 10 years ago, in that metaphorically I kind of liken it to being like high up in a mountain. Yeah. You see this serene setting where you're right at the first source, the first trickle of water coming out of the ground that is, makes its way down the hillside, taking the path of least resistance, gaining strength and gaining size. It, eventually becomes a stream, becomes a bigger body of water, so big that it actually carves its way through the land. Yeah. Gains strength and becomes this invincible body of water, head into a marriage with the sea or the ocean. That for me is how I felt as a young fella, right? So when I left school and I joined the Royal Navy, I had 9 years in the Royal Navy, which were just some of the best times of my life.
Yeah,
right?
Well, because of the camaraderie?
Yeah, camaraderie, being paid to travel the world. And I'm still friends with many of those guys that I joined up with, still to this day, 30 years on. But that's how I felt, right? I just felt like I was this invincible being. Nothing really fazed me. I didn't really get stressed. I didn't really know what mental illness was. I saw my dad have a breakdown in the 80s, but it was still very much a taboo subject back then. So it was one of the very few times I'd seen my dad cry. I think I've seen my dad maybe half a dozen times in my whole life, right?
Wow. But those moments are powerful when you see someone you look up to, have looked up to all your life, cry.
Yeah. I reckon most of the tears we shed were together before I moved over here.
Really?
Yeah. Because he understood why I moved over here. Because my dad's like a best mate to me too. Yeah.
It's amazing.
Big role model. It was difficult when I left, but, he's been over here 3 times now to see us, so my mum. But, that's how I felt. I joined the military and I was travelling the world. And then towards the end of my naval career, I met we had our oldest daughter, Jade. Yeah. And that's when the military life was like, no, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah. Too much time away?
Yeah, because at the time I was on board ship. They were like 9-month deployment, so it was...
Wow.
It was like, see you in January or see you in March and I'll see you back in Christmas.
I can't imagine that. I thought 4 and 1 or 5 and 2 was hard. I can't imagine 9 months away.
Like in 92, started doing workups in the January. I wasn't with them then. Went away in the March. Got back in December.
Well,
and I was down the Gulf, and then Christmas leave type of thing. And then same thing again. Workups again. Early 93 and out in Bosnia until later on that year. And then I left that ship at the end of 93, so I had a bit of time shoreside, and that's when we fell pregnant and I got married. Then it was time to go back to sea again.
Yeah.
You know, you get to pick up another ship, and then it's, I don't want to be doing these 9 months away. And when you think about it as well, we're talking like 20 odd years ago, so there was no internet, there was no Skype, mobile phones were crap. I might be at sea for like 3 or 4 weeks at a time without any contact with your loved ones.
That's way too much.
And then you come alongside, mail arrives, and you end up finding out everything through mail, through like snail mail, original mail. Or you'd come alongside, mail didn't come on board till maybe the next day. You managed to get some shore leave, you'd find a public phone somewhere or international phone card, you'll phone home, catch up on everything that you've missed over those last 3 weeks since you spoke, and then the mail would arrive telling you exactly what you'd found out on the phone anyway. So yeah, it was difficult back then, and that's why the guys on board became your family.
Yeah, I can imagine that was tough to be away that long, especially not having contact for 3 to 4 weeks at a time. Did you use your mates on board, this camaraderie, as something to fall back on when you did feel mentally drained?
Absolutely. Because everyone's in the same boat, right? Whether you had a long-term girlfriend, partner, or kids, or whatever. I always remember the first 2 weeks at sea was shit.
Yeah.
It was just awful until you got away, but once you got into the routine of naval life and what you're doing every day, it was fine. And then even on board, you know, we had a gym and you could run around the upper deck. There was always stuff to keep you focused. Yeah, you did fall back on them. Yeah, without a doubt. None of us would get through those long times away from home without each other, without a doubt. And as I said, I've got some of my lifelong friends that I've made from the military.
Well, I can see why now. You said you were this teenager who felt invincible, like that water flowing down from the green pastures, eventually cutting its way to the sea. Walk us through your story from the Royal Navy.
So I left the Royal Navy in end of 97, and I applied for the fire brigade and the police, and the police came through first, which was quite ironic because I grew up hating coppers, so to become one, and it's true though, and as I said, you know, I was running around with the wrong bunch of people really, and for a while, and those people who I thought they were my friends, when I became a copper, dropped me like a bad habit as well. So, but that was fine, you know, I knew that was part of the territory. Left Royal Navy, joined Cheshire Police in the UK, and I was really just after a secure job. Initially, but I fell in love with it. Being at sea, one of my things I used to do, keep me occupied in downtime, was reading. I've always been an avid reader, and I was really fascinated about like true crime, Jack the Ripper, all the, you know, serial killers, all that type of stuff. So it just fascinated me how do these people work, right? And then, you know, after being a copper, 3 or so years after becoming a copper, I was a detective, and I was working on homicides and chasing those type of bad guys that I'd kind of always researched and looked into as far as true crime goes. And loved that. Still that invincible person, right? You know, I was kicking in doors, chasing down bad guys. I'd sort of carved quite a decorated career as a copper.
Awesome.
And then in 2005, and this will make you giggle, 2005, we were getting itchy feet. We'd been in our house for a while, you know. Been copper for a few years, and while we were on holiday in Fuerteventura, one of the Canary Islands that year, and we were talking about, should we move house, should we maybe move to the country, or maybe start a new life in Spain, or, you know, it was one of those type of things. And then I was reading a paper one day in work, and there was an advertisement for New Zealand police.
Oh, wow.
They were recruiting international police officers, so I was thinking, a couple of cousins that had moved to New Zealand, and I thought, we could do that. Took the advert home to Em, and said, look about this, and she was like, no, can't go to New Zealand. I was like, why? We'd recently watched a documentary with Ross Kemp, and it was about the mongrel mob. And this is, I knew it would make you laugh, because I was this invincible copper, right? Got into covert op and doing drug investigations, working homicides and all that. Em knew the type of person I was like.
Yeah.
And she was going, no, we're not going there because you'll end up getting mixed up with that lot. You'll end up locking them up. You'll end up doing all this. And I'm like, well, you know, there's gangs everywhere, love. You know, it doesn't matter where we go. Anyway, long story short, in that same conversation, she says, No, we're not going to New Zealand. But if Australia comes up, we'll look at that. And me thinking internally, I didn't say anything to Sam, but I'm thinking, what, and you don't think the gangs in Australia? And you think Australia's safer than New Zealand? Anyway, straight away, this was like the end of August 2005 that this happened. And straight away, I was on the internet, I was having a look, see what was around. And as it happened, Queensland, South Australia and WA were recruiting coppers as well. Yeah. I looked at the different packages, and WA had the best package, permanent residency from day one and this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
And then I looked at the entry requirements, and I had 4 days to get my application in.
Wow.
So I worked my nuts off over the next 4 days, got my application in, and 11 months later we arrived.
Wow, yeah. That's amazing.
I know.
It's a big turnaround.
Massive turnaround. Yeah. And it was literally like a whirlwind. It was like, and what was also funny at the time was my offsider, who was a trainee detective at the time, had also applied, but we hadn't told each other.
Oh, well.
And it wasn't until we both put in for leave on the same day to go down to London to sit the entrance exams and things that we found out. And he's still here too.
Really?
Yeah.
So you both come over here together?
Yeah, he lives in Mandari.
Oh, okay.
We're still mates now. Yeah.
Oh, cool. So
neither of us are coppers anymore, but yeah.
What sparked this need to get away from where you were based in England?
Look, I could just see the UK was changing a fair bit.
Yeah, in what way?
Well, just the level of crime. I'm not a racist person, one bit. The immigration policy in the EU borders in the UK meant that a lot of transient criminals from different European countries were coming in. And I could just see crime changing when I was a copper over there. And
becoming more violent?
Yeah, and also getting closer to home.
Okay.
So we lived in quite a safe town, and about 12 months prior to us moving over here, there was a guy shot at the end of our street.
Wow.
And that was the turning point for me then.
Yeah.
I was thinking, if it wasn't Australia, it would have been somewhere else, because we were obviously talking about that anyway. 2 young girls at the time, of course, want to protect them, bring them up in a safe environment. I didn't think Em at the time would actually want or be interested in moving the other side of the world, but fair play, she gave it a crack. And when she came up with the idea of, we'll look at Australia, well, for me, I was just transported back to when I was a kid, right?
Yeah.
Living over here, remembering the beaches as a kid, remembering, swimming in my auntie's swimming pool in Adelaide, all those type of childhood memories. And I thought, I want my girls to have the same thing. So that's what we did, and then we moved over here.
And do you think that's been the right choice for your family?
Oh, yeah. I haven't been back since.
Oh, well.
12 years this year, and still haven't been back to the UK.
Can't say I've met many Poms that haven't been back.
No. I've talked about it, we've spoken about it so many times, and we considered it. And don't get me wrong, I miss people over there.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of money for it not to be a holiday. It would just be visiting people. And going through what we've gone through as a family, if I'm going to have a break through my working year or wherever it is, I want to have a break so I can recharge my batteries, or my family and I can recharge our batteries too. So as much as I love people over there, I'd have to be getting a holiday out of it too.
Okay, that's fair enough.
We have talked about it so many times, and to be honest with you, my folks aren't getting any younger and probably won't make the journey out here again. So I'm probably going to have to at some stage, but I'll go via somewhere in Europe. Yeah, so moved over here. Family was settled in okay. Went through the academy, got all that, back on the streets again. Fighting crime. And
were you in the same homicide role?
No. I essentially gave up being a detective when I came over here. I had to start again in general duties. And all that, which is fair enough, and that was the deal. But about a year, maybe 8 months after coming over, I managed to get a job, State Intelligence Division, doing covert work.
Wow.
And, for me, I thought, perfect way to try and get back to at least the level of operation I was at. So I ended up being on this team going forward, and we've been over here about 2 years. We were building this place, and the kids were settled in quite well. And we had a fair few bit of financial pressures, building and renting and all that type of stuff. And one of my things I still have to work on is I really put a lot of pressure on myself.
Okay.
Bit of a perfectionist. As the head of the family, it's my job to be the keystone.
Okay.
To
so
be
like
the
the provider?
Yeah. And at the time I was putting a lot of pressure on myself, and I probably, looking back now, depression was creeping up on me. Because I'd been this invincible person for so long, I probably didn't want to accept it either.
Yeah. So do you feel like your identity was tied to your position in terms of work?
my identity, me being this invincible person, a strong father and role model to my kids and the husband to my wife and all that type of stuff. So it was making sure they were still settled in or settling in. And I was working this real high pressure, high risk job. Yeah. So there was the pressure of that too. But at the same time, the detective sergeant and detective senior sergeant I was working with, whether it was because I was a POM or whether they saw me as being parachuted into the role on this covert team. Okay. Which I probably kind of was, but based on my merits, based on my experience and doing that work previously. And it was a new team doing certain work that hadn't been done here in Australia before, but we'd done in the UK before. So, and I think there was just a fair bit of resent from them because of it. So they set about this 6-month period of systematically bullying me. When we weren't operational as far as in the high-risk situations we were in, even back at like the office, I'd just be given shitty menial tasks. It was just all about disempowering me and knocking me down. But operationally, they would set me up or try and set me up to fail. And what their goal was, they were going to try and performance manage me out of the position by saying I wasn't fit to do this job. Me being a perfectionist, knowing that I was good at my job, I was probably a victim of my own circumstance and my own success. So every job they set me in to fail, I came back with a result. I was kind of fanning the flames, right? And I wasn't doing it to piss them off. I just wanted to be accepted, right? I just wanted them to accept me as a good cop, good crime fighter, covert operative, but as well as my family pressures, the pressures of that work. And also, at the time, I had 3 personalities, right? There was me, Jason Nelson at home, and then I had 2 pseudonyms depending on the jobs I was working on. Yeah. Right,
so and what were those?
I can't tell you. Because I'm still sworn to secrecy as far as operational stuff, even though I've been out of the job 10 years. But I was basically 2 other people.
Oh, so you mean 2 pseudonyms tied to your work and undercover? Okay, yes. Sorry, I thought you meant as in another personality that you have in certain situations.
No, I don't break out the spandex like a superhero or anything like that.
No, it was like... I thought you meant like maybe you're one person at home and at work you'd to fit in be a boy's boy.
Oh, no, well, I mean, that was definitely the case as far as the person that I was at home was different to work, without a doubt, because you just didn't bring work home. You can't come home and,
of course,
describe some of the horrific scenes that you see, right?
My dad does the exact same job, and I've never once had him talk about any of that stuff to me. To be honest, it must be pretty hard for people who work in homicide and first responders, because they do have to deal with that by themselves. They can't bring that home and share it because it's too much for a family to deal with. So I can't imagine what you're going through then.
Just touching on that, and the first responder services now, who I do a lot of work with through the mental health space, they're realising now that in a big way. That gone are the days when I was a cop where, if we'd had a really tough shift, we'd go to the pub afterwards, just get pissed, and it'd be black humour that would get us through. But, that type of stuff's frowned upon now, and rightly so. You can't really all go out as coppers and get pissed. But that was kind of how we cope back then. But yeah, anyway, getting back to my story, so I was going through that period, and it just sent me into a real dark spiral, And I was in a really dark place, struggled to get up out of bed every morning, and along with the depression, the panic and the anxiety of the sickness deep in the pit of my stomach, having to go to work every day and face that was just unbearable.
So this bullying started out with them trying to undermine you, and then you fanning the flames, just wanting to do a good job and fit in.
It was just a vicious circle.
And then it eventually turned into something that you were afraid to be a part of, or
I was just scared. It just made me feel sick going to work, not knowing what I was going to face. Okay. The fact that
in terms of what you'd be solving, or the bullying,
the bullying, and knowing. Well, or not knowing what job they were going to set me up for next, right? Because I'd worked up until that stage as a copper with that unwritten rule that everyone has your six, everyone has your back. Yeah, of course. And if any of your colleagues go down, an officer needs assistance, everyone pours out of the police station and backs them up, right? And now I was working in a situation where those same people were corrupt and were trying to... Yeah. And we're talking about working with serious criminals, right? So if something had gone wrong, my life, my safety was at risk.
Wow, so it wasn't just nitpicky.
No, they were setting me into operational situations where I was to fail.
Wow, that's...
But because, and where I talk about victim of my own success, I was And I'm proud to say I was that good. My tradecraft was that good.
Yeah.
That I always came out with a result, right? But it could have gone so badly so many times. And that's why I became so depressed.
Did you ever find out why they were doing what they were doing? No? Okay.
But I wasn't the only one. I found out there was a bloke before me and then there was a bloke after me that went through the same process. So.
Yeah. Well, being in that position, being undermined by people that are supposed to have your back, your six, as you called it, obviously being someone who had that childhood memory of this team of people running this team, congratulating you, those commandos, and then going into the Royal Navy, having that camaraderie, all those people to fall back on. They were your brothers, and then coming into this position where they're supposed to be your brothers, but they're setting you up into life-threatening situations.
Yeah.
I can definitely understand how it was causing you this depression that you've said you had during this period of your life.
I reckon that's sort of towards the end of that 6 months, definitely. Was probably the hardest.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, one of them, the hardest periods of my life, without a doubt. Because I'd never experienced any mental ill health, right? As I said, I was this invincible guy. And that's how I saw myself, I'd be the first through a door and I'd be jumping all over a bad guy, and I faced people with knives and bats and guns and all that type of stuff before, and I never once ever thought, I knew there was risks to those things, right?
Yeah.
But for me, it was always a calculated risk. And when I was wearing those uniforms, right, I did feel invincible. I felt almost like a superhero.
Okay. And so how did it make you feel at the end of that 6 months?
Well, I was suicidal. At the time, we were living in a rental house in Ridgewood and being on this unit, not all the time, but a lot of the time, I was bringing my firearm home. I had a safe in a walk-in wardrobe in the master bedroom.
Is that normal to bring a firearm?
No.
Oh, okay.
No. I don't know what it's like now. I'd say back in the day, some country coppers might have firearm safes in their houses because they own a copper in the town or whatever. But no, because I could be called out at any time in this job, and where we worked out of was a safe location. It wasn't a police station, it was a covert location. If we got called out on a job at 2 o'clock in the morning, it'd be straight to the job, so my firearm had to be at hand. But having a firearm when you're suicidal was probably not a good mix, So I used to come home, and I heard all of it from the girls, but Em knew I was not well.
Yeah.
But I just covered her off as stress of the job. Because I never brought stuff home from the job, so it was just stress of the job. But she knew increasingly I was becoming unwell because she'd catch me crying. I'd be coming home, unload my firearm, which was a Glock handgun, put it in the safe, get a shower, and a lot of the time I'd end up just curled up in a ball in the shower tray, sobbing my heart out, before composing myself and then coming into the family space to be dad and husband. But that was just getting harder and harder. And then it got to the point with the suicide ideation and contemplating suicide. I chose 2 different ways of doing it. One was obviously to put the gun in my mouth, which I did several times.
Okay.
Squeeze the trigger slightly. And another way that I planned was just to drive a car straight into a fucking tree or a wall, or something like that. And it was after one of the times where I'd had the gun in my mouth, and literally just after Em walked in, I was just an absolute mess. I didn't want to be here anymore. And I didn't want to die. I've got to make something clear. Yeah. But I just didn't know any other way for the pain to stop. I didn't know the pain to end, and I just thought that whole self-worth stuff and being the provider, that was all playing on my mind,
So in a sense, you're sort of failing the expectation you had of yourself in your head?
Oh, absolutely. Everything was in place financially if I died. So I just saw it as a way out of the pain. And this is from a person who, as a kid, had a phobia of death. Right, I used to make myself sick thinking about fear of death as a little kid. Grew out of it, but it kept me up at night. And it got to that point, and that's when I first admitted to him that I was suicidal and I was really not well.
Wow. How did that conversation go?
Oh, fucking hard, man. Yeah, one of the most emotional conversations I've ever had, I'd say. It was that, I liken it to that feeling of, I wouldn't know how it feels because I've never drowned, but you see something on the movies where someone's like drowning, falling down the water, and then they're sinking, but all of a sudden this one hand reaches in and grips them out of this abyss. That's how it felt for me, right? It's like this hand pulling me out of this dark hole
So do you feel in a sense that M was your saviour or this conversation?
Yeah. Certainly gave me the courage and the empowerment to speak up.
Okay.
You know?
I guess hearing that conversation alone gave you the encouragement to speak up. Did you feel while you were going through this period of being suicidal, having the gun in your mouth, planning to drive into a tree, did you feel isolated and like you couldn't reach out for some reason?
I'd withdrawn. I'd isolated myself rather than being isolated.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want, I felt like a burden. I didn't want to burden anyone else with the pain I was going through. And
well, you'd done it your whole career, so
I
can understand why they didn't change.
Yeah, but obviously, knowing now,
that
was the wrong thing to do, and now I work encouraging other people to speak up about how they feel and sharing their experiences. And definitely being in them careers, it was macho orientated, male dominated cultures where stigma was rife, and it still is to some degree. Putting your hand up to say that you're mentally not well, sign of weakness, you worry about your career, and all of those things went through my head, right? When after that conversation with them, I knew I was that unwell that I had to do something. I had to speak up, and that's what I did, right? So next day, instead of going to the covert location where we used to work, I went into the police station in the city, went to see the superintendent, dumped my shit on the desk and said, find me another job, because I'm not working for them anymore. And I had another breakdown in her office.
Wow.
She was really supportive though. My superintendent at the time, and although nothing was done about the two guys, I was kind of swept under the carpet a bit. At least they found me another position to work in and got me to see a psychiatrist.
Okay.
Which was kind of important for me. I just wanted to get off there and get some help. I was angry that nothing got done with them, but
of course,
karma came round to bite them on the arse a few years later, so I'm not really bothered about that. But I was just in that point of crisis where I needed that help.
And backtracking back to that conversation, did having that conversation with M then allow you to see that you're not a burden and that it was finally okay to speak about it?
The feeling of self-worth and burden and all that, I still struggle with that.
Okay.
From time to time.
Yeah. Not
to that degree, but, I'm still the head of the family, I see it, and still the provider, and still got to be the strong one. But I have learned that I don't always have to be the strong one, and I do need self-care and I do need help. But that's come, with 10 years of trial and error and working on my mountain fitness. But at the time, no, it was just about how skewed my thought process was about they'd be better off without me and all that. And it wasn't about whether they were better off without me. She made me realise how much I would have missed out.
Yeah.
And the times and memories with them if I had killed myself. And we've always been a close family, and I've always been close to my girls. So I think back now and I think, God, imagine if I had, I would have missed out on this last 10 years of their lives, their formative years, and seeing them growing up into beautiful women, But it didn't really change my thought process about mental illness.
Okay. So you're still very much this macho, keep it to yourself.
Yeah. Up until 3 years ago, I probably never spoke about it.
Really?
Yeah.
To anyone?
Close people.
Yeah.
Very few people. I'll never publicly speak about it. Never to work colleagues. The guys I've worked with for the past 10 years. They've only just found out the last 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah, because of that same thing. I disclosed it back then, 10 years ago, found the help, came good again.
Yeah.
Managed my symptoms, managed my signs, back to being this invincible, or what I thought was this invincible person.
Yeah.
And I think it was because it was so ingrained in with me for military career, police career. That's how it was. Yeah, I only started talking publicly about mental health and being passionate as an advocate after Holly, our youngest daughter, attempted suicide. Coming up for 3 years ago now. She had a couple of overdoses in the space of 3 months, and that was the shift in me.
Okay.
So I went from being this invincible guy to a guy now who's like a go-getter, career-minded, want to get promotion, I want to climb the ladder, I want to do all this, and not really focused on material things, but I was always trying to succeed, better myself, all the time. And then after Holly attempted suicide and we went through the aftermath of that, it was like a holy fuck moment.
Yeah.
What have I been doing these past X amount of years, and even really got me to reflect on my own mental health recovery journey. And that's when I became passionate about speaking openly. I thought, well, I was part of the stigma.
Yeah.
Right? Because I couldn't speak openly about it. I wouldn't expect anyone else to. And therefore, I was part of that stigma movement.
Yeah.
Because I was in that male-dominated society that, that causes this pervasive fear of speaking up. But yeah, after watching your own daughter overdose and going through the aftermath of her being in, secure mental health facilities and getting the right treatment for her and again going through the whole anxiety of that aftermath with the family and what have you. Yeah, just for me it was like, that's it, no more now. I've got to try and help. I didn't want any teenagers to go through what Holly went through. Unfortunately, they still do. But I thought if I can do something, if I can learn, if I can share my experience, or at least be a voice for people living with mental health conditions, then they may have the courage to speak up too.
Yeah. And so do you feel you sort of limited Holly's ability to speak up because you, in a sense, were putting on this front, this bravado, instead of being who your family needed you to be, who you've become?
I would say I probably say, in all honesty, because of the way I was and the person I was, I certainly didn't help Holly heal. I certainly wasn't the best parent I could have been. And my parenting style has completely flipped on its head.
Okay. So what's the change?
Well, I was this hard-ass disciplinarian, military guy, police officer, my way or the highway, suck it up, princess, all that type of stuff. And when Holly was ill, looking back now, when leading up to Holly's attempts on her life, we butted heads a lot. And what I saw was just bad behaviour from a teenager and stropping off to a room and all that were actually signs and symptoms that I should have probably picked up on.
Yeah.
And shouting and screaming and very much a carrot and stick type relationship. We like, if you don't do your homework, well, you'll take your iPad off you, take this, all that type of stuff. And looking back, it just didn't work. And as I said, my parenting style is completely flipped. And although she's 20 this year, so she's not a kid anymore, but our relationship changed.
Yeah.
3 years ago to now, we rarely argue, rarely have a bad word. We sit down and talk things through. And the extra study I've done since into mental health and my understanding, because as well as depression and anxiety, Holly is borderline personality disorder. So a lot of her behaviours or signs and symptoms come across as attention-seeking type of behaviours, but it's not. It's a signs and symptoms. So I've learned so much more as a parent and as a person, as an appreciation for mental health. And it's actually got me to then obviously reflect back on my own journey and going back to reconcile with a lot of those things and process of things that I went through. And I suppose what we didn't kind of touch on, 5 years ago I had this routine hernia operation, right?
Yeah.
Distance running, too much gym and distance running, ended up in this tear, get the hernia fixed, which went great, came out of surgery, not a problem. Em and Holly had been in to see me and just felt tired as you do after general anaesthetic. Go and have a walk around the shops, I'll get a couple hours sleep, I'll be right. And then during that sleep, I woke to the feeling of what felt like my heart pounding in my throat, in my neck. Obviously didn't feel very well at all. Called the nurse. 2 nurses come in. They took one look at me, looked at each other, took another look at me, and then pressed the emergency button. And because I was still on OBS and that, I could see my heart rate was like 160 and climbing.
Wow. Yeah.
From a standing start in my sleep. And mine sits around 50 normally, so...
Yeah, being someone who runs a lot.
Yeah, so for it to go like that, I was like, I'm not even doing anything, I'm just lying here and my heart's fucking beating like this. Next thing is, the alarms go off, the crash team comes in, I've gone from little old me in my hospital room to like 15 people, doctors and nurses everywhere. And I was shitting myself, because everyone was rushing around, but no one was really talking to me.
Yeah.
All I could feel was like my veins pulsating in my neck. And I just started crying. I was like, I remember saying to the nurse, and her name was Kiara. I'll never ever forget her name.
Yeah.
I remember saying to her, you got to tell me what's happening, because I'm not ready to die today. Because I was proper shitting myself. And she said, I really don't know. Your heart rate's just climbing and climbing and climbing. I said, someone's going to have to tell me what's going on, because I'm fucking shitting myself here. And then eventually got one of the consultants to talk to me, and she said to me, look, your heart rate is climbing. Don't know what it is, but if it keeps climbing like this, and we can't get under control, then we're going to have to use a defibrillator on you to shock your heart back into a normal rhythm. I was like, or you're going to have a heart attack. I was like, oh, yeah, okay. If I wasn't shitting myself now, I definitely was.
Now.
And while all this was happening, and Holly walked back in to this pandemonium. I'll never forget it. I remember Holly screaming in the corridor.
Yeah.
Like walking in and going out screaming. Just dropping her shit on the floor and like rushing over to me. And then he spent the next 4 hours pumping me with meds to lower my heart rate, which started to lower. But the problem with those meds is it alters your oxygen levels and all that. So it was a real balance. And my heart rate didn't come back to normal till the next day.
Okay.
So you can imagine how exhausting that is. If you're out in the gym and your heart rate's up about, to whatever level you get it to, you feel it, don't you? Because you're working it. I was lying there and I was working it. So I was literally exhausted. Anyway, all came good. Went through all the cardiac tests and all that type of stuff. But what came as a result of that was that traumatic incident in itself in the hospital triggered all of the trauma that I'd locked away in my head since I was a kid to come tumbling down. I liken it to like a library, right? So as you go through life, you pick up these little short stories of trauma that you put on the shelf in the library and in the back of your head, and it'll be right. Just put it there, leave it, compartmentalise it. But if you're not careful, obviously the library and the bookshelves can come tumbling down, and that's what happened on that day. So physically I was fine. They just put it down to an adverse reaction to the general anaesthetic or something like that.
Okay. But
this triggered all this trauma to come out. So I spent the next 3 months hit left field with PTSD signs and symptoms, flashbacks, night terrors, hypervigilance, paranoia, thinking people are following me, and I still to some degree, if I'm in a cafe or a restaurant, I'll sit with I've got to view the exits. But I'd never experienced any of this before, these sort of symptoms, and things are triggering me like smells or tastes. And I was obviously started having flashbacks to the abuse I endured as a kid, loss of my best mate Pete, who died on my books night, early hours of my wedding day, my grandmother who died, these things that I'd never processed properly. Yeah. I picked up along life's journey, but never really processed.
Yeah, well, you didn't teach yourself how to process.
No, exactly.
That was the person you're supposed to be for your job.
Yeah. So this invincible guy, but I was carrying this bookshelf of shit around in my head, right? Anyway, so 3 months I kind of put up with these symptoms, trying to figure it all out, and it started me on another depressive cycle. Okay. And I wasn't suicidal again, but I knew I was going that way if I didn't get some help. And I remember the day, I was working in the office in Burragoon at the time, so I was getting the train. I was on the train between Perth and Cannon Bridge, and in between those two stations, I just broke down emotionally. Well, here's a bloke in a corporate wear, busy commuter train, sobbing his heart out on the train. And I remember it well because not one person asked me if I needed any help. Really? Not one person stopped, asked me if I needed any help, or even asked what was wrong. Yeah. And again, that was another thing for me. And I tell that story because I'd never want to be that person. And I want to teach people never to be that person.
And do you have an understanding of why it was exactly that you were crying?
I just felt emotionally broken. I just knew I desperately needed help.
Do you feel like it was all finally coming out after being held back for so long?
Yeah. That, and I knew I wasn't dealing with those signs and symptoms well. Yeah. Kind of probably had a suspicion it was PTSD, but I probably didn't want to
admit it.
Yeah, I didn't want to put my hand up again, still trying to be this invincible person, right? But I knew. I got off the train, I was still crying. I phoned them and told her, and I said, look, I feel like crap. I said, I'm getting on the train back home. I'm just walking into the GP's and asked for it. And that's what I did. And I was pretty much crying all the way home. Wow. Hiding it with Sonny's. Sorry about that. That's one of the dogs. Went to see the GP, which led to the diagnosis of complex post-traumatic stress disorder, which I'm still working through now. Okay. But so going through depression, anxiety, my own PTSD journey, and then Holly. Yeah. Kind of all that came in the last 10 years. And that's what leads me to what I do now.
Which is amazing.
And on the back of that, got some further education and do a lot of charity work.
Before we move to what you do now, which obviously inspires me to do what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Like I said, I do look up to you. I do want to go back to what you've been through.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, going through what you went through at work, the bullying, the suicidal attempts and thoughts, having that conversation and opening up to M and then asking for a replacement, and then having to go through this train ride where no one asked you, and then Holly, obviously you've been to see professionals to help you through this, and you've learned tips, tools and tactics to help you along this journey. If you're looking back at all those events now, what were the major lessons you took from them?
The biggest lesson for me is the importance of engaging help early and often as well. Mm-hmm. It's not like you go for one visit to the GP, you get one happy pill and you're all right again, or you go and have one visit to the psychologist and you're all good, mate. You know, it's an ongoing process. Yeah. And I don't know whether ice cream, Andy. Yeah. I don't know if he's still here. I don't know whether fully recover or whether actually want to. I know that might sound bizarre, but I just see it as a learning journey, and I'm still learning. I might fully recover because I'm still going through therapy. I'm still getting help. But at first, when I first sought help, I just said, I just want to feel normal again. But I think my recovery journey is my new normal, if that makes sense. Yeah. Because I don't think how I was before this invincible person was normal.
No, it's not.
Probably these were all... Well, I know now that a lot of these things were part and parcel of that imbalance that probably led to where I was going to anyway. Yeah. Educating myself and seeking qualifications in mental health, I've certainly learned about that whole holistic balance and how the social side or your environmental side or your lifestyle or your cultural side or your spiritual side, if you get any one of those things out of whack, out of balance, it can tip the scale. So looking back, who was I to think I was invincible? You know, that was the path I was on. And that's why I liken it to like a river carving its way down. You know, I was just, get out of my way. I'm coming through. This is the person I want to be. But now I think back, no, that's not the person I wanted to be. Yeah, this is the person I want to be now, and that's what I strive to. Yeah, definitely. Say top tips. Definitely open up early. Open up often, and knowing that it's... I was actually weak for keeping it inside. Okay. It's not a weakness to open up. No, it was a weakness to keep it in, because that was eventually what was my undoing. That was my weakness.
In a way, it's a weakness keeping it in because you're bowing to peer pressure, which is what you encountered in the police force and the Navy, keeping this trauma to yourself.
And that was it. As I said, that was the weakness, because now I know that mental health doesn't discriminate. It can affect anyone at any time. Just in Australia alone, 50% of the population at some stage in their lifetime will live through a mental health condition. So to have this unrealistic expectation that it would never happen to me, and that's what still goes on in those cultures now in the services. And that's why I'm really strong about breaking down that stigma and those myths. Because they're just barriers to care, right? They were barriers to my care, and they're still barriers to other people's care. So, yeah, I suppose that's probably the biggest thing was opening up. You know, I always say that now to anyone. As it happens, that's obviously what your podcast call is, opening up. So, and it's so important. It's the first step to recovery, is opening your mouth and putting your hand up for help.
Well, you did say that the first step to recovery is opening up. We are going to move on to recovery and the specific tips, tools, tactics, be it people or methods that you use to help you come back, or that you're currently using to help you come back from that failure to live up to your own expectation, the attempts at suicide and the PTSD. Yeah. What have you used or are you using at the moment that are making a big impact on your life mentally?
It's not for everyone, but I'm on medication. Yeah. I've been for a number of years now. Again, one of my stupid macho things when I first become ill was like, I'm never going to go on medication. But now I understand what mental illness is and my mental illnesses that I live with. I need that medication to rebalance the chemicals in my brain. Yeah. And without that medication, at the moment, I probably wouldn't be as balanced. So it keeps me on an even keel. Yep. And then gives me the space to do the other stuff. So as far as other stuff, talking about psychologists, I still see a psychologist regularly.
Awesome. And how do you feel that's helped you?
I think we've mentioned before I started speaking that I'm on my 6th psychologist over 10 years. Wow. That's not because I've broken the last 5.
Yeah.
And this is a good bit of advice for listeners, is that it's okay to change from psychology. It's very important to find a connection with a psychologist, one that works, the right kind of chemistry and rapport. And my previous psychologists weren't bad. It was just that they only got me to a certain point,
of course,
or helped me deal with a certain thing. Whereas the one I've found now, currently working with, Jess, her name is, she's the first one that's really gone back to my childhood.
Yeah.
And we're working through this timeline of my life, and we're unpicking things as we're going.
I can imagine that's powerful.
It is powerful, really powerful. And
scary?
Not scary. It's exhausting at times.
Okay.
I come out of sessions feeling exhausted, sometimes emotionally. I also come out looking forward to the next one.
Yeah.
If that makes sense, because I know how much good it's doing for me. So a few things along the way: cognitive behavioural therapy, obviously the talking stuff with a psychologist. I've done cognitive writing therapy, and I still do that myself. Not under any guidance, but I know what to do with that now, so I still do that.
And what's cognitive therapy, right?
So it's kind of writing about things that, depending on what it is, for me, the trauma, write about the different incidents of trauma. And some people may think, well, isn't that re-traumatizing? Well, yeah, it is difficult to write about those things because I write about them in as much detail as I can. But it's also very cathartic. It gets it out of your head and on paper, right? So there's benefits in that. And then what I do then is, after I've written these things down, I'll go back to them over a number of days and read through it again, read through it again. And what that does over time is help you desensitize to a lot of that trauma.
And although it is essentially writing to yourself and still keeping it to yourself, it's better than holding that inside internally and not even processing it. It does give you a chance to process it and acknowledge that it is there, that it has happened, but that you are trying, in a sense, to let it go.
Exactly right. And then I've taken it to a different level where I now write poems about my feelings of those traumas too.
For yourself, or do you share those?
I'll be sharing them as well.
Well,
but I also write about recovery and about what you should be doing to help other people heal. In poetry as well. So
that's amazing.
And again, it just makes me feel, it helps me with my own feelings, helps me, as you said, externalise it rather than internalise. That's helped a lot for me. The running, obviously.
Yeah, of course.
And I always look out for new things as well. So from time to time, I'll go back and do some yoga. I'll meditate. An old police sergeant, actually, who now lives in New Zealand, taught me a meditation method when we were coppers together back in the UK. And it takes 10 to 15 minutes, but it's really quite powerful.
Awesome.
So I'll go back to that from time to time if I need a bit of mindfulness. And recently I did some equine therapy.
What's that?
There's a place up in Bullsbrook called the Kindness Project.
Mm-hmm.
Run by a lovely woman called Jenny. And essentially, horses have this ability to self-regulate and actually help deregulate your own feeling.
Really?
In their presence, yeah. So it's really hard to explain.
Yeah. I'm
going to do a blog on this in the future with Jen's help, but...
And hold on, is that blog going to be posted on your website?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So we'll link your website, Kilted Rogue Runner, in the show notes below, just for anyone that wants to check that blog out.
That'd be awesome. Essentially, you don't ride the horses.
Yep.
You just share the space with them. So
it's amazing.
She has a herd of 8 horses. On the 2 days I went, the first day I went in, basically sat on this huge log in the shaded area of the paddock, in with the horses. Jen and I were just chatting and then interacting with the horses as they see fit. So you're not forcing yourself upon them. You're waiting for the horses to come to you. It sounds really bizarre, a bit kooky, but it's really powerful.
Yeah.
They actually pick up on parts of your body that are in pain and can kind of mirror your feelings. It's like an energy connection. And there's this one horse, like the leader of the herd, that dog was going to be the death of me. You wouldn't think her name was Princess, would you? I had this connection with the sort of leader of the herd, this horse, and I didn't share too much with Jen. She knew I'd had some lived experience, but I didn't share with her any physical injuries or anything that I had at the time. Anyway, sharing a space with these horses, there's just this one horse really close, and horses are beautiful anyway, but at the time I had a bit of a tight shoulder, left shoulder.
Yeah.
And also was suffering with a bit of pain and pressure issues with my ears. I've been flying around the state in February a lot, talking about in my own agency, my workplace, talking about workplace resilience and recovery. A lot of flights in my ears, the pressure in my right ear kept playing up. Anyway, sat there talking, and the horses are doing whatever they're doing, and next thing is this horse comes up and nudges my left shoulder like 3 times. And Jen's like, picking up on your shoulder there. How's that going for you at the minute? Don't tell me you've got an injury or something. I obviously was carrying an injury at the time. And then horse came round to the front and started moving its mouth in a funny way and twitching its right ear. And she says, he's picking up something from your head. And obviously I hadn't disclosed any of this. And, people listening might think, well, it might be coincidence. But and I wasn't feeling emotional like I wanted to cry. Yeah. But I started crying. Okay. It wasn't like hysterical crying. My eyes started to leak. Yeah. For want of a better word. But I wasn't feeling like sad or anything. Yeah. It was more a feeling of relief or
release.
Yeah.
I've had that same feeling with Reiki.
Really?
Yeah.
So that's something I want to explore. There are a few friends that practice, and my dad practices. Yeah. But not that he's ever done that on me. But yeah, horses have this innate ability to sort of like suck bad energy out of you. And then they carry it off to another part of the paddock and release it. That's how it works, essentially.
I'm going to have to look into it.
Mate, I'll send you up to see Jen. She'd be more than happy to see you.
Sounds good.
Yeah, so I ended up like spending a couple of hours up there. But I came away like so much lighter and what have you. And I came home and I was telling Holly and them about it. And I said, I can't explain it. It's one of them things that you can't even Jen, who runs the Kindness Project, finds it hard to explain it because a lot of it's feeling and it's hard to explain feeling. Anyway, I came home, told her, and Em was like, when can we go? Spoke to Jen. I said, no, it's a long weekend, but if you're around, can we pop back up? And she said, yeah, come on. So I took Em up with me, and we were in a different paddock, opposite side of the hill, if you like. Fed the horses, and I had the same connection with the same horse again.
Wow.
But Em saw it, and Jen was explaining this stuff. When they talk about humans, like when you're in REM sleep, it's about rest and repair. Your body goes into rest and repair. Well, horses do that several times through the day.
Wow.
So when you have this interaction with them, they then go into this state of rest and repair. And it's bizarre because you're in this paddock with these horses, and then they all of a sudden become like statues. Where they're kind of sleeping, standing up, and in this rest and repair state. But this horse wouldn't leave me alone, I was having this continual interaction with him. And then later on, towards the end of the session, one of the ponies came to Em and started interacting with her. Yeah. And it was strange the way it was set up, as though the horses were mirroring Em and I and our kids. Wow. If that makes sense. When the horses set themselves up, a number of the horses separated them off as a family unit and behaved that way in our presence. It's really crazy. Hard to explain. But again, I came away from that like, wow. Yeah. So there's the kind of things I look for. I'm always on the look for new things. And
I think that's really important to not just understand what it is you're going through, but to actually find something that works for you, because not everyone's the same and not everything's going to work for everybody.
And that's so true, mate, because what I learned studying Cert 4 in mental health last year is what we call the principles of recovery. Mm-hmm. So you've got the clinical side, the psychiatrist, psychologist, medication. And that's very much a process of trying to find a cure, right? Trying to fix you, but them fixing you. Yeah. Whereas the recovery model is giving you the power to fix yourself, right? Yeah. So you follow those principles, and one of those principles is person-centered, which you touched on then, in that both you and I are different. We come from different cultural backgrounds, as most of Australia is so multicultural and everyone's so different. But even people in the same family are different. I can have different coloured hair, can have different heights and all that. Well, so our recovery journeys are totally individual. What might work for me might not work for you. Yeah. When we talk about running, people go, I couldn't think of anything worse than going for a long run. But it works for me, right? Yeah. But for other people, it could be music, it could be scrapbooking. It's finding that purpose and working to your strengths and your interests. And that's the other reason why I'm seeking a lot of these new things out, because I want to share them with other people. Because one of the things I've found, certainly with my mental health studies and being a peer support worker, is people don't know where to look. Yeah, there's so many really awesome services out there, and many of them are free. Yeah, right? Because that's another barrier to care. Is a lot of people think things cost money. There's so many good things out there, but they're just not advertised. They're just not promoted, because mental health care is the poor cousin to physical health care. Yet suicide's one of the leading causes of death in Australia.
Yeah, of course.
But it doesn't get the airtime, it doesn't get the funding, it doesn't get the resources. So yeah, that's another reason why I do, to be able to share those resources and find things that other people might not necessarily find.
That's amazing. We need more people doing that, definitely. Of those tips, tools and tactics, the medication, the psychologist, the therapy with the horses, everything you've used so far to help you recover, if you're speaking to someone in your situation who's gone through something similar to what you have, what would be something you'd recommend for them to try first at that?
First and foremost is opening up, right? You've got to go to your GP, let them go through the diagnostic processes, and at least that's your first step. Right? It doesn't necessarily mean you need medication, but they can get you on a mental health care plan under Medicare, which gets you 10 sessions with a psychologist, if need be. And I'd say it takes at least 6 before you start making any headway with a psychologist anyway.
Okay.
And when I was talking about shopping around, if you end up going to see a psychologist or a GP and you don't get the response you want, and if you don't get the lead into the care that you need, then go and see another one.
Okay.
That's one thing I would say, right? If you go to Coles, you go to buy some apples and the apples are shit at Coles, where do you go? You go Woolies, right?
Yeah.
Same with doctors, same with healthcare. If you're not happy with someone, you don't keep paying them money to be shit. You go and find one that works for you.
Cool. So that would be what you'd recommend to start off with, opening up, see your GP, and then request that mental health plan that we spoke about on episode 3, I guess, with Shannon. Yeah. So going through that recovery, do you ever fall back into that state of depression or those suicidal tendencies?
Oh, not the suicidal ideation, thankfully, no. But yeah, I have bad times for sure, and I still, like this last few weeks, especially with the court case leading up, with my historical stuff, my sleep's been shocking.
Yeah,
I probably had 2 full nights sleep in the last 3 weeks. Well, because of nightmares or busy mind or whatever it might be. But that's okay because I know what it is.
Yeah.
And I just keep working on what works for me, getting my mind into as quiet a space as I can before I go to bed and all these type of things. But yeah, of course I fall back, and that's one of the principles of recovery I was talking about before, and there's 7 of them. One of them is recognising that recovery is non-linear. That recovery with anything, we want it to just be this straight road and it's A to B and dead easy. But it's not, it's this squiggly line with hills and peaks and troughs and steps up and steps backwards. But it's okay to fall, right? It's okay to fall as long as we keep falling forward. That's how I see any relapses or any drops or any increases in my symptoms. I don't see it as a step back. I see it as a fall forward.
Okay. It's a good way to look at it.
Well, the thing is for me, the 2 words mental health straight away just bring up negative connotations, right? There's just so many negative connotations. But mental health is actually the opposite to mental illness, right? But the words mental health mean mental illness to people. Yeah. So I try not to talk about working on my mental health. I just say I'm working on my mental fitness because it's a far positive way of looking at it. If we're injured or we're ill, we go to the doctors, we go to the gym, we work on a fitness level. Right? Well, I'm just doing the same for my mind. I'm just working on my brain.
Exactly. And that's what you have to do.
Yeah. And as I said, one of those principles of recovery is acknowledging right at the start of your journey that it's non-linear. Okay. That it ain't going to be a quick fix. That it's going to take time and give it time. And you might have to fall forward a couple of times, but you're still moving forward. Right?
And again, if we are using that mental fitness adage that you said and relating it back to the journey of physical fitness, you wouldn't go into a physical fitness journey thinking the next 2 sessions I'm going to be fit, I'm going to be where I want to be. So you sort of have to go into that mental fitness journey with the same attitude that you would body transformation.
Yeah, that's exactly right. If you put it into a sporting context, I read this in an article recently online where it said, like mental fitness journeys, like when you're playing on a team sport, right? If you're having a bad trot because of an injury or whatever, or your form's not that right, coach subs you, sticks you on the bench for a while until you come good. That's all the mental fitness journey is about. Sometimes you've got to sit on the bench, take stock before you can come good again. But you'll be back on the pitch, you'll be back on the field, you'll be back on the oval, whatever it is. That's the kind of way I look at it. It's okay to take a knee. Yeah. Take some breaths in.
I love that saying. I'm going to steal it.
Steal it? I stole it.
Okay, so we're going through your childhood, your story, and your recovery, if we're getting to where you are now, having gone through this depression and suicidal tendencies, through this fear of failure, the bullying, the PTSD, the trauma from the hernia, to Holly having overdosed twice, having gone through all of that, which is a lot of hurt and a lot of pain to bear, a lot of stuff to work through, what is your quality of life like now?
Awesome. Yeah. There's a phrase for it now. It's called post-traumatic growth.
Yeah.
Where you don't just get to this point of norm, but you actually grow.
Yeah.
On top of that, and that's kind of how I see it. I think it was the title of my first blog on my page was "Through Struggle Comes Strength."
Yeah.
And to follow on from that, it's given me a passion for compassion. That's how I see it now. Whenever I talk about it, when I'm speaking publicly or giving presentations, I actually say I'm grateful for everything I've been through, and I mean that wholeheartedly, because those life lessons have given me this passion, this real love to keep the conversation going. Breaking stigma down.
We were going to step into what your mission was, but it sounds like that's what it is just there.
Yeah,
for
sure.
I guess opening people up and taking away the stigma to make mental fitness, as you called it, a little more mainstream and a little more acceptable to speak about. How are you going about achieving this?
It kind of started back in 2011, really, after suicide attempts and recovery from the depression and that. And I started out with 3 other friends, co-founded the Rogue Runners Club Australia, a free-to-join running community here in Perth where like-minded people get together and share their experiences, involve family and improve fitness. So that's kind of where it started.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, we raised, over the last 7 years now, we've raised over $80,000 for different charities. But what was happening each year, we were choosing a different charity every year.
Yeah.
But we found after the GFC and, pressures in our own lives that it was becoming harder to re-energise every financial year to raise money and so on and so forth. So at the time Holly was in hospital, we were already looking at finding a new charity for the following financial year to start in 2016. And I came across Siren to Silence, which is a charity based out of Broome, here in WA, by 2 former paramedics, Lynn and Ian, after a spike in first responder suicides.
Yeah.
And they could see that there's people falling through the net in the services and what the services were providing. So I came across Lynn and Ian and I started speaking about them and the work they were doing. And as it happened, when the second attempt, we were struggling to get Holly a bed in a mental health facility, and I contacted Lynn and Ian. And with their contacts and with their help and their support, we were able to find somewhere for Holly. So it wasn't just this charity that was for first responders living with mental illness. It was about support network for the families of first responders, and that includes former first responders like myself. So after going through that and their help, it just struck a chord with me.
Yeah.
And given that 3 of the 4 co-founders, Rogue Runners, were ex-coppers, it kind of fitted right, and we wanted to find a charity that we could link with long term to save re-energising and putting too much pressure on ourselves. So that's how we got in with Sirens.
And so is that how you see yourself achieving this mission of taking away the stigma?
Well, it's certainly helping. So we joined with Sirens 2016.
Yeah.
2 years on, I'm now the vice president of that charity.
Cool.
They're growing in size and in the help and the support services they do.
Yeah.
And with the peer support work that I was doing, Sirens put me through to do a Cert 4 in mental health, which I did last year.
Yeah.
Which I completed at the start of this year. Which
Congrats,
really,
by the way.
Thank you very much. And I recommend it to anyone. It really opened my eyes up, especially to recovery.
Yeah.
The recovery model, but also to mental illness in general. The main ones we hear about are depression, anxiety, PTSD, schizophrenia maybe.
Yeah.
But actually there's over 400 diagnosable mental health conditions, which obviously opened my eyes. But it also educated me about a lot of the myths and this, that, and the other. And in doing that, I got the opportunity to do a couple of speaking gigs, just small, low-level ones. But I found sharing my story and my lived experience was really striking a chord with people and helping other people.
Of course.
This is what I was discovering, meeting people like yourself and others along my journey, sharing our experiences, and I was just getting some really, really good feedback, but I was kind of just finding my feet and feeling as I was going, but it seemed to be working. And then August, September last year, I was invited over to Brisbane to speak at an international post-traumatic stress conference over there.
That's amazing.
And I was like the final speaker, keynote speaker on the second day. I'd like 2 weeks to prepare, this invite, and I was like, oh God. But you know what? It was one of the most powerful experiences. And it was quite emotional for me. I got emotional on the stage, and it's full of academics, right? And military and first responder people. It was all about military and first responder stuff. But I got up there and shared my story, and it just made me realise the power of lived experience.
Yeah, of course.
And funnily enough, 12 months on, a lot of the charities and organisations now are recognising the power of lived experience and using people with lived experience to empower others.
Obviously, being up on stage, sharing a message that's as powerful as the message you're sharing at the moment, having lived through all those experiences, you never know who's in that crowd who might be experiencing something that they haven't yet externalised or processed, or haven't even thought about processing. That's really powerful, and I'm excited to see where that takes you.
Oh, I'm excited too. I'm part of that journey. The last 6 months, I went back to the Western Australian Association for Mental Health. I just finished a recovery storytelling course.
Wow.
Classroom full of awesome people, different lived experience, learning how to share their story. And I suppose I was kind of ahead of a lot of them in that I'd already been doing a bit of speaking. But I learned so much from them, and there's people in the room in the 50s and 60s, but there's kids in there just turning 20, all sharing experience. And not one story more powerful than the other, just different for different reasons. So I've learnt a lot out of that, and as we said at the start, I'm now on the speaking bureau for Western Australia Association for Mental Health, which again is giving me a great experience because I'm not just resharing my story. I'm tying it into different subjects now. So whether that's de-escalation techniques, post-traumatic stress, mental health first aid, workplace wellness, whatever it can be. So I'm honing my skills now as well as helping other people. And then I've always had this sort of thought once I started doing this that I could take the public speaking further and also start to get into workplaces, doing training and stuff. So only a few weeks back launched my own website, the Kilted Rogue Runner, and offer those services. So whether it's public speaking or workplace training, also a couple of weeks into the blog space now. So obviously I wanted to share different aspects of my story and my journey, but I only got so much airtime. So I opened it up to anyone that wants to share their stories about mental health. So essentially I'm opening up to guest bloggers now. I'm about to post one tomorrow from Heidi Anderson from Heidi's Avian Ryan from 92.9. Who's a mate of mine who lives with anxiety, and she's got quite a powerful story, so she'll be up tomorrow. I want it to be a positive.
By the time this episode's out, guys, that blog post from Heidi, from, what was it?
Heidi Anderson from Heidi Xavier and Ryan from Hit 92.9.
Okay, so her story, her personal struggle with anxiety will be up on kiltedroguerunner.com.au.
Yep.
I encourage you guys to go check that out because, of course, someone in that position, that takes a lot of courage to share a story like that.
It's a really interesting story. One I'd encourage especially female listeners to tap into because she talks about body image and their own issues with
and that's something that a lot of people struggle with.
Yeah, so that's what I'm doing. I'm opening it up not just for people in a position, public eye, like Heidi, but anyone really who's got a story to share. I'm opening it up. You can contact me through the website. Or email me at thekiltedroguerunner@outlook.com.
Awesome.
And, it's all about sharing experiences, but it's got to be a positive message about recovery and what's worked for different people.
Yeah, of course. It is all about helping people and encouraging people to open up. So with that, I'm going to wrap up. But I just wanted to acknowledge you again for what you're doing. Obviously, you've been through a lot. You've been through a lot. Having coming from England, that position of power, this bravado, macho, and having gone through what you have and flipping that into becoming this loving, helpful father rather than the disciplinarian you talked of, to now helping other people who are struggling, whether it's through speaking or Sirens of Silence with the charity, helping PTSD with first responders. it's amazing what you're doing, and the fact that you continue to learn and grow to help people even further. That's really inspiring to people like me who are just starting off on this journey. So thank you so much.
No, mate, you inspire me too. I've said before, I'm a lot older than what you are, but the fact that you're able to recognise what you've been through yourself and making a difference at your age, you're years ahead of me in many respects.
Yeah.
Because you've got many more years ahead of you to share this and do what you're doing, which is awesome, by the way. So, yeah, that acknowledgement is reciprocated, mate. The fact that you're doing this is amazing.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, fingers crossed we can continue helping other people. Like, moving forward for me, I'm already looking at maybe doing a diploma in counselling. So we'll see how that goes next year. I've got to get through this year.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it'd be pretty cool. The Kilted Counsellor.
Yeah.
I don't know if that'll work.
Might have to wear some jocks under
Yeah,
that
I think so. Yeah. It's all about learning and being able to keep that conversation going, more importantly, and who's to say we can't turn these statistics around.
Exactly. Well, I really, really believe that people like us are going to help take mental fitness, as you call it, #mental fitness. It's going to take that, mainstream. I believe it's going to become something that is acceptable to speak about. So, thank you again.
That's all right. My pleasure.
This has been awesome, man. Thank you for letting me come over and do this with you.
No, completely my pleasure, my honour, mate.
That was episode number 4 with my man Jason Nelson, also known as the Kilted Rogue Runner. Of course, like I said before, links to his contacts, his website, his blog will be in the show notes below. That is the kiltedroguerunner.com.au. And for that blog, for that guest post, if you're looking to be someone who does want to share their story on his site, the instructions will be in the show notes below as well. Don't forget that by the time this episode comes out, the story with Heidi from Heidi, Xavier and Ryan will be live. So go and check that out. It deals with a lot of body image issues, which is something that I struggle with myself. If you're looking to be a part of the Open Up group, the closed group, whether that is general or the FIFO, the Fly In Fly Out group, I'll link that in the show notes below. And until the next episode, take care of yourselves and enjoy life. Ciao.